welcome back to Just Really Blended. I'm Jesse,
And I'm Tom.
and we're joined with Tony Mohr, um, and he's gonna talk to us about his book, his time as a Supreme Court
Or Superior Court judge, right?
Superior Court judge.
In Los Angeles. Is that right? In Los Angeles
That's
County?
correct. Superior Court of LA County.
That's pretty awesome. That you could probably just write a book about that experience in and of itself, I would imagine.
Oh,
But
you never know. It's crossed my mind. We'll see. I've written some essays about it, so we'll see what happens.
all right. But you have written the book about your experience growing up with a blended family, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's pretty much what our podcast, I mean, it's not all we talk about, but it's a big piece of what we discuss is what it's
Yeah,
ways of dealing with issues that come up when you're a blended family, supporting the kids in a blended family, all the things that can come with it. So, can you tell us a little bit about your background with that, your story as you were coming up in that blended family?
Sure. Well, again, thank you for having me on. And basically, my parents separated when I was 9 years old.
okay.
What happened? It's a common story. The other woman got involved. She showed up on the set. My dad was an actor, and he was in a TV series. She was the what we used to call the script girl. Now, I guess the script supervisor. And
Okay.
the next thing you knew, my dad and she were an item. My father left my mother 2 years later. My father married Mai, who came from Sweden because that's where the series was shot.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, my folks divorced. On the other side, 2 years later, my mother married another guy. And we moved. We had been in New York for a year because my mom moved there to be near her own family, her siblings and her mother. But we moved back to California because that's where Stan was from.
Mm.
And so, yeah, it was a blended family on both sides. And every other weekend, I shuttlecocked between the two households,
Yeah,
which, of
Man.
course, led
Yeah.
to the title of my memoir.
yeah. That's what I was just gonna say. I was like, I know your title's called Every Other Weekend, so I was like wondering how that worked out. Like, so did you have to travel every other weekend between California and like New York, or?
I traveled between Beverly Hills and Hollywood.
Oh, in
So
Hollywood. Oh,
luckily,
okay,
you
okay.
guys ended up, parents were somewhat in the
Yeah,
same
yeah. I was like,
geographic
Right,
area.
right.
That's
So there were
good.
no
That's
plane
good. That
rides
would have been
involved
very
or
difficult.
yeah, that's
anything
kind
like that. It was an easy drive back and forth. One would pick me up. Usually, my dad would pick me up and drop me off.
of,
Okay.
And he and his new wife were moving a lot. They lived in the Hollywood area for a year. Then they lived near Universal City for a year, which
mm,
was not that far away either. Then they moved up above Sunset Strip to a house on top of the Hollywood Hills, and that was for a year. Then they ended up actually in Beverly Hills uh,
Wow.
at a house, and then finally to an apartment. It was always rental houses and then to an apartment, which reflected the fact that my father's career, which had been pretty good until the series, started to slip.
mm.
And at the same time, my stepfather's career was going up and up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw that he was like into like credit card, like he introduced kind of credit cards, kind of.
Well, his company made the machines that emboss the credit card,
Oh,
Oh,
and
okay.
the store would imprint the credit card.
Hmm.
So back in the old days,
you had
before they
the
had the little, yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
They put the slip of paper in, run
yeah,
uh, the, the what you call it, gizmo over it, write in the amount of money you'd sign it. That was the imprinter. The
Man.
embosser put your name on the credit card.
nice.
Okay.
Those were in obviously larger facilities, and they would spit out the cards, and then you'd show up with Bank America card and your name on it.
That's cool.
Man, yeah. So you kind of saw two different sides, like the one side that's getting into a better economic situation,
Yeah,
a side that's struggling a lot more.
Right.
You were 9 when they split up. I know in our case, I'm the stepdad.
I'm
Jesse is the biological
yeah.
dad.
She was like maybe a year old when me and my ex-wife split up. So
Right. And her knowledge of the way life works, this is just a very normal thing for her. How was it for you as a 9-year-old kid dealing with basically your
yeah,
whole world changing?
Very upsetting.
yeah, I can imagine.
There was trauma involved.
Hmm.
And I mean, if I were to give advice to anybody who's got a kid and is planning to separate, get the kid into therapy.
Mm,
That didn't happen in the 50s. My folks separated in 1956.
hmm.
And, nobody thought about psychologists or psychiatrists. If you did, the common, uh, the common thought was, oh, he's crazy. He's seeing a shrink,
Yeah.
right? Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but it would have been very helpful. And so
Hmm.
I'd say to anybody, if you're planning on a divorce, get your kids into therapy. They may seem fine with it. They may seem even happy with it because, now they're going to have a much more quiet household,
Right.
but something's going on. You know,
Yeah, my when I met my wife, she had three kids from her previous, and I think the oldest at the time was probably 12. I think I want to say I think it was about 12, 11 or 12. So it and I can see that it was actually really tough on them.
Hmm.
Especially the older ones. Oh,
excuse me.
bless
Bless
you.
Sneeze
you.
on it. It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it was like seeing that and coming in as a stepfather to, I went from having a 1 year old to now I got these three kids that, I'm not trying to jump into that role as being their dad, but like I could see that it was really tough on them. So I can see that being a thing where you're like, oh, maybe we should have, maybe talked to the therapist or got him into something like that.
Yeah. And
I sneeze again. I think we have
bless you again.
I think we have
It's
pollen here, Jesse. I'm not
it's
sure.
all good.
Any
So the
case,
stigma piece of it, you'd mentioned something about that, with the stigma back then being so much different than it is today. I
oh
mean, I
yeah,
don't think anybody thinks that divorce is a great thing, but it's definitely less stigmatized today than it was back then. There was a
no
lot,
question.
especially for mothers trying to raise kids, that came with that. How did you feel, as you were going to school and, a 9-year-old kid? Um, was that a really difficult piece of it? Is just like the social stigma that came with it, or was
The,
that relatively easy compared to everything
the
else?
kids did not stigmatize me. I wasn't teased. I wasn't ostracized, as far as I know, at any point along the way.
Hmm.
But I sort of knew deep down I was different.
Yeah.
Now, in my fifth grade class, I don't remember any divorces other than myself. I found out later there was one divorced kid, but
Mm.
I didn't find that out until years later.
Hmm.
In high school, I actually gravitated toward the quote unquote well-behaved kids. Now,
Hmm.
sometimes if the divorced child of a divorce goes off with the wrong people, runs with the wrong crowd. I went the other way. I wanted to be in with the nice children,
Hmm.
and I managed it. Uh, but nobody in that crowd came from a broken home, and that was the term back then, broken home.
Yeah.
Right.
Nobody did. I was the one person who did, but nobody held it against me as far as I know. No girl refused to go out with me. Not that I had that many dates in high school.
I was
I
gonna say you're
certainly
lucky.
did,
That's good.
but I don't remember, if somebody refused to go out with me because my parents were separated, I don't know that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Nobody ever said that to me. And
And
I
it
don't
wasn't
think,
something that you hid. It was something that was well known to your peers and your friends in
well,
school.
my friends knew, sure, okay, they'd come over to the house and I'd say, meet my stepfather.
Right.
My parents had a different last name. So
Mm.
they knew something was amiss.
Sure.
And I remember I was asked at a book reading, how many of your friends met your father? And the answer is, I think only one.
Mm.
Oh
I
wow.
think only one, including girls I went out with. And it's funny because my father was catnip to women. He was well known. He wasn't like John Wayne or Lee J. Cobb, but he was a
Mm.
known actor.
Hmm.
And I never made it a point of introducing a date to my father, um, but several of them knew who he was. I remember there was one girl I went out with and I liked her, and her mother the first night said, "Oh, I have such a crush on your father," which was kind of embarrassing to
Sure.
date.
Like,
Kind
oh
of wanted
man.
to hustle me out of the house.
That's well,
Wow.
yeah,
That's
well, because like him and I, we grew up differently. I think I kind
mhm.
of like lean towards how you probably grew up because I grew up in a broken home. Essentially,
Right.
I was raised by my mom, and I had a stepdad here and there, and it was just a different environment growing up because I grew up in Henderson, Nevada, and
Oh, you were in
so
Henderson. Okay.
yep, yep, and but I never, like you said, I don't know, maybe it was just what I was used to, but I never had anybody like tease me or do any of that stuff either. So it's like, I don't know.
Mhm.
It was just a different environment And then when I hear about like maybe someone who has, like you guys, you grew up with your mom and dad.
Yeah, we were like your nuclear family. We were.
Yeah. It's cool to hear those stories and but it's like, oh man, I wonder what that'd have been like.
Mm.
Did you
Yeah,
ever wonder like what it would have been like to just like have your mom and dad together? Was that ever
I
like a
do.
yeah,
Sure. I mean, even to this day, sometimes if it's, 2:30 in the morning and I haven't gotten to sleep or I woke up suddenly,
yeah.
yeah, I might think, yeah, what would have happened if they had stayed together?
Mm.
And I don't know. I mean, one person reviewed my memoir and she wrote, it was the best review written. It was a very honest review.
Hmm.
Uh, and she wrote, if it weren't for my father, I never would have written the memoir. If it weren't for my stepfather, I never would have become a judge.
Mm.
And it's hard to say what would have happened if they had stayed together. Would I have become an attorney? Would I
Hmm.
have gone into the entertainment industry? Um, would I have gone to the college and the law schools that I went to?
Yeah,
They
that's true.
weren't cheap. They were private schools. They cost a bundle back then.
Hmm.
It costs even more now. Would I have done that, or would I have, gone to school locally because money had been tight?
Hmm.
My stepdad was obviously quite wealthy,
Yeah.
and he had no trouble sending me wherever I wanted to go.
Hmm.
But my father might not have been so easy.
Yeah, yeah, no, I can see that because you do wonder where's this path going to take me if
Hmm.
they would have stayed together. And yeah, that would be.
Yeah,
I think
we.
I had those same thoughts myself. It's just like because
we
I kind of gravitated towards the good kids myself. It's just like I
Mhm.
don't want to deal with this like being this way. I grew up in like abusive home, so I didn't want to grow up dealing with that. So I was like, let me go over to these people,
Right.
see if I can learn something over here.
I get it. Well, for me, school is the stable center of the world
Yeah.
Mm.
because my father's second marriage was pretty bad.
Mm.
Mm.
In fact, at one point he moved out and he swore to me he was going to get a divorce, which delighted me.
Yeah.
Although they didn't, they made up. But
Uh,
he had a long-standing affair, which frankly never ended.
mm.
Uh,
Um,
it looked like it was over, but I found out many, many years later they had gone to ground and they just saw each other very discreetly.
Mm.
So that marriage wasn't very good. And on my mother's side, they had a storybook marriage, but my stepfather was very different. My dad was kind of, hang loose, live life large, have a great time, yuck it up, have great laughs at the Brown Derby. Stan was a workaholic, and he
Mm.
wanted the kids to work. He even said one time, "quote Children should not have so much fun," end quote.
oh,
Okay.
So there were
That
times
says a
I wasn't
lot.
that happy there, and school became the staple center of my world.
Mhm.
I mean, that makes sense though.
Yeah.
Did you play like any like sports or do any of that like
I
any
got into
stuff?
fencing.
Oh,
Oh.
nice.
Yeah, I wasn't very good. I've never been the most coordinated athlete in the world, but I did fence, and it wasn't a school sport, but there was a couple of my friends did it, and one person actually was very serious about it and ended up going to the Olympic Games in fencing, and he was
Wow.
captain of our team, I think, in 1996 in Atlanta.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. Yeah, I remember those
That's
games.
awesome. Wow.
Carl was, just an amazing, amazing fencer. And
Hmm.
he stayed with the sport. He's always been with it, and it's he also became a movie producer.
Wow.
Yeah,
You,
but he
you got more
suggested
books
I
to write,
fence,
I
and
think.
Yeah.
This is
yeah,
very
he
Quite
suggested
impressive.
I fence, and one of my closest friends and I got involved in the Salle de Nord. That was the name of his group. In fencing, it's a SAL, SALLE, that you join.
Okay.
And so every Tuesday night, I believe it was, we'd go to the Salle de Nord and we'd practice and fence and all that, and I'd do my best.
That sounds
Wow.
fun though. Kind of sounds fun.
That does sound pretty cool.
It does.
Yeah,
It
I
really
don't
does.
think we even have fencing around here. I'm not sure. So,
Just building them. That's about it.
yeah, we have
Yeah.
fences, but
Ben says,
Yeah.
exactly.
oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
Was there a between your like your dad and stepdad? Did they get along? Because like him and I, we get along pretty well. Was there any kind of dynamic with like the step parents together, or was it just separate?
Nada, nothing.
Uh,
I don't even, they may have met once. I don't remember them ever talking to each other.
Oh, okay.
My
so when
father
you
picked
were
me up
dropped
outside.
off, it
I'm
was
sorry?
just when you were dropped off, it was basically just you got out of the car,
Right,
went in the house. They did not talk or communicate in any way.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was no communication at all. Can you hear me okay? Somebody's running a lawnmower next door.
Oh, we can hear you fine.
Yep.
Yep.
I don't even hear a
Yep.
lawnmower.
We hear you great.
Okay.
Um, did you wish that they would talk? Was there a part of you that wanted them to get closer, or were you
Yep.
happy and satisfied with it the way it was?
I
Would
was
you
happy
rather?
with the way it was.
Okay.
It's interesting. My father's wife and her former husband became very friendly with my father.
Oh.
Yeah.
Deed was an artist and actually a very good artist. And the two of them got on just fine.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is when we were living in Sweden. That one year he was doing the TV series. And, I never thought anything about it other than, okay, like, good for them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I never wanted Stan and my father to get together. In fact, I never thought they could get together.
Mm.
And I would have been shocked if they tried.
Just two different personalities. It would have
Oil
been
and
too
vinegar.
difficult. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah.
I think we lucked out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're water and water. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Something.
But yeah, it is a very interesting thing. We talk a lot about the dynamics that have to be in place for a blended family to work,
Yeah.
at its sort of like maximum capacity. And we've been very fortunate with circumstances for us and our ability to build a friendship, but that's not very common. Even today,
Yeah.
even
That's right.
without some of the stigma that once existed, people are shocked. Some people, it's kind of like, how are you guys friends?
I don't think I could
It's
do that.
like,
Yeah.
but yeah, it is interesting. Did you have to put a lot of work as you became an adult into reflecting or making decisions in your relationships um, based on your experience as a kid, or did you find sort of guiding principles all along that you knew what you wanted and you didn't struggle with relationships? How did that part of life go for you?
Well, I didn't get married until I was 66 years old.
That helps. That could help all of us.
That
So,
helps.
yeah.
So form your own conclusions about relationships pre-marriage.
Uh,
Yeah. I was just
yeah.
gonna say I can see that being like I don't know if I want to jump into this just yet.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to marry them or they didn't want to marry me.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But I was very, very, skittish about getting married,
Hmm.
extremely so. And, I got lots of ultimatums, once I was out of law school and in practice and, quote unquote, making some money. Yeah,
Hmm.
I got a bunch of ultimatums from girlfriends and mutually I voted with my feet.
No.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, well, I'm out of here.
And was that, do you feel like that was based on like fear of what marriage can become? Was that based on that experience with your
Oh,
parents or
yeah,
just you weren't ready? Yeah.
both of the above.
Okay.
But I mean, I was very into the career, into work. I didn't think I had time for marriage, let alone children.
Yeah.
But a lot of it, I'm sure, was just fear based on what I saw.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I saw, I saw three types of marriages. My parents' marriage on the surface seemed fine. Underneath, it wasn't at all.
Mm.
And looking back on it, I understood subconsciously it was not good. I used to like draw cartoons,
Hmm.
Mm.
and in the cartoons, the adults always yelled at each other. Flames would come out of their mouths, out of their ears when they communicated.
Hmm.
So it's like
Okay.
something you heard and saw probably.
Yeah, but I don't remember my parents ever screaming and yelling at each other.
You just sensed that there was something not right, even if
Right.
you weren't seeing it
Yeah.
directly. Yeah.
My father's
Yeah.
second marriage did have fire and brimstone coming out of both sides, of both
Mm.
people. It was a bad marriage.
Yeah.
Um, and then my mother and Stan's marriage was storybook.
Hmm.
So, I had three of them. Unfortunately, the storybook marriage didn't take hold till I was 11.
Mm.
Mm.
So I
How
guess
long did they stay married?
until my mother died in 1994.
Oh,
Wow.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So,
figure 58 to 94, what, 37 years, something like
Oh,
that.
so she found her love. That's
yeah.
good.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
They were very much in love and they were very devoted to each other.
Good.
Yeah.
How was your stepmom towards you? I know it sounds like your dad and her had, tension built in. Was she accepting of you? Was she warm
No,
with you or was she,
She
she would
kind of.
snap at me a lot.
ah,
She
yeah.
snapped at me a lot. I don't think it was the best relationship in the world. It was interesting because when we were in Sweden and she had first met my father, she wormed her way into the household,
Mm.
have dinner and stuff like that. And I remember shortly before we left, she got her hands on a children's book called Peter är barnvakt, which means in Swedish, Peter is a babysitter.
Oh,
and it's a cute book.
Yeah.
She translated the entire 44-page book, literally
wow.
sat down and translated every sentence.
Wow.
And my mother was so, oh, look what my did for you. And I was nervous about it.
Yeah.
Something
Mhm.
seemed off. I still have the book, by the way.
Wow.
But in any case, she did that. So she obviously wanted to have a relationship with me.
Hmm.
But after the marriage, there were some heavy bumps in the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
That doesn't feel good.
my mother treated Stan's two children like her own.
Mm.
That was that one, that relationship sang very well.
Hmm.
And in fact, my stepsister, all the way through would joke about my mother and call her, "Oh, hi, wicked old stepmother, how are you?" They got along beautifully. But,
Endearingly. That's that's
yeah,
good.
much better than Leslie got along with her own mother.
Yeah. And it sounds like you had a pretty decent
Yeah.
relationship with Stan. You mentioned the catamaran in your book. I believe that you go out with you on the catamaran. So you guys got along pretty well.
We did. We got along pretty well, better and better as the years went on.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
there were some again big bumps in the road. One of
Sure.
my chapters talks about, you know, uh, an incident which you could call child abuse if you want to, because
Mm.
it got very physical.
Mm.
The name of the chapter is A Bowl of Jello,
Oh.
which
Mm.
belies what the chapter was all about. But in any case, yeah, we did get along. He did treat me like his other two kids. There was no difference. There was no
Oh.
daylight between his attitude toward me or his attitude toward his own.
Hmm.
That makes sense.
And what would you encourage for parents, today? You mentioned earlier about advice that you would give. So with parenting, we talk about this a lot. Do you have advice for parents? How do you treat a stepkid? When do you start treating them like your own kid? What would you advise someone newly getting into a situation where they're going to have to start, interacting with someone else's children and maybe becoming that figure for them?
Well, don't treat them any differently from the way you would treat your own kids.
Hmm.
I think you just there's no make sure there's no difference there.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That would be, I think, the first thing you do.
I
You
agree.
may want to consider therapy again. I
Hmm.
said that earlier, and maybe at the beginning when you've got suddenly a new stepchild in the picture, you may want to go in that route, depending
Hmm.
on how they're reacting.
Yeah. No,
I wouldn't do
like
that immediately, but it's certainly
Sure.
something to keep in
yeah,
mind.
that's something like my wife, when my daughter came into the picture and stuff, when me and her met, she treated her just the same as she treats, her own kids.
Mhm.
And she does that with anybody's kids. His kid comes to our house and she treats him just the same, like,
Right,
just
Yeah.
like
right,
Blanca treats JJ
Right.
the same.
Right.
But
sure.
yeah, I would agree. And
Yeah.
it is different. Like I said, when I came in as a step parent, because I'm new as a parent already. So then all of a sudden now I got more kids and I'm like, I don't know what to do. But it was just, I always told my wife, I'm just going to stay who I am. And I know
Yeah,
maybe not right now they don't like me, but eventually I think it'll come. It'll come. And like you said, it took years for you and Stan to kind of like build this relationship. And I feel like for me, that's kind of the same thing. Is it's taken me a few years to finally get a good relationship with my stepkids.
yeah, it's hard to do. I mean, kids don't come to you with instructions, so you really
No,
have
they
to kind of
don't.
pick your way through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah. It's like, oh, come on.
So you have had a very successful career, obviously. You became a Superior Court justice, and that is something you have to get elected to, right, correct?
It's both. In California,
Okay.
you can either be appointed or elected. Most judges on the Superior Court are appointed
Oh, okay.
because the way it works is it's a 6-year term
Hmm.
and it's unlimited. There are no term limits. You can keep going.
Okay.
But at 20 years, you're eligible for a full pension.
Oh.
So the majority of judges will leave after 20 years,
Hmm.
which means they're leaving in the middle of their term.
Okay.
That's the case, the governor appoints to fill the vacancy. It's like a senator. If a senator leaves during the term, the governor fills the vacancy. That's not the way it works with members of the House.
Okay.
That causes a special election,
Hmm.
but not with judges. So the vast majority of judges are appointed to fill out a term, but when the term's over, you run for election.
Okay.
And
And is that how you initially started? Is you were
correct.
appointed? Okay.
And you
Yeah, Pete
finished your
Wilson
term, it sounds
appointed me
like
to
then.
the municipal court, and then 3 years later, on a Christmas Eve, he appointed me to the Superior Court.
Oh, that's cool.
That had to have felt great.
It felt great. It did.
I'll bet.
Yeah, very heady experience. And fortunately, nobody opposed me in any election. So
Nice.
that's kind of normal in a big county like LA.
Uh-huh.
If you're in a small county, you could get a challenge because it's not that expensive to run.
Oh, okay.
In LA or Orange or San
Okay.
Diego,
Yeah.
it costs you a lot of money to run and try to unseat a judge.
So you really need to have a political group behind you to kind of help with that, I'm sure.
In some place like Alpine County or Modoc County, yes.
Yeah.
But in LA County, no, as long as you don't do something incredibly crazy,
Hmm.
chances are it's a lifetime appointment.
Oh, well, it seems to be working out for you with, with your career. It sounds like you did a very good job.
I
How
tried.
do you feel that your experience growing up, the type of law that you dealt with, I'm sure is very different than like family law, but
Right.
your experiences growing up in the blended family, the way that you came up, how did that impact you as a judge, if it did at all?
Well, that's an excellent question. And the answer is it did.
Mm.
I would almost tell anybody who ends up as a child in a blended family, become a judge.
Yeah.
No.
You're getting the background you need because you are now navigating two different cultures.
Mm-hmm.
It's like spending one weekend in Guatemala and the next weekend in Japan.
Mm.
Oh,
Mm.
You've
okay.
got very different cultures to deal
Right.
with. And, when you're a judge hearing trials, you're dealing with very different points of view.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to figure out the source of a dispute, who's right. Generally, both sides have a little bit going for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always black and white.
Yeah.
And you're trying to figure out what caused this. Maybe you can help them settle the case. Or maybe, or you're getting underneath what's being told to you to figure out what the real facts are. And then you look for the law and you apply to the law to the facts and try to reach the right result. But if you've got experience with two different families, especially opposite families, as I did,
Mm-hmm.
it helps you later on.
Sure.
It really
I could see
does.
that for
Yeah,
sure.
in that aspect, it
Yeah.
was an asset to you to have that experience. Not
Correct.
that it was emotionally, but it gave you definite skills to
To kind of
utilize
view
later.
things differently.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
and I didn't realize that, of course, at the time. You don't
right.
sit there at 10 years old or 11 years old going, oh boy, I'm going to be a judge now.
Yeah,
Look what I'm learning.
someday
You're not
Yeah.
going to
this
do
will
that.
really work out for me.
But,
Yeah.
but, looking back on it, the older, wiser narrator, if you will, you look back and say, okay, hey, there was something there.
Yeah.
Hmm.
There's something there. There's a reason that, I'm maybe trying to be a good judge and a better judge than a lawyer. I'm much better on the bench than I ever was as a lawyer.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
interesting.
lost clients because I would sit there and say, well, wait a minute, Mr. or Mrs. Client, look at their side of this. This is
That's how
what
I
they're
would be.
saying.
I'm just like you. Like, we can get along here. Come on.
Yeah, and then the client gets really angry at you. I want you to kill him. Yeah, I get him. Oh, wait a minute. He's got a point. Don't you understand that? No, I don't. Well, if you're a judge, you understand both. You try to figure out both sides' points of view, and you maybe explain it when you make your ruling.
Nice.
And it helps you reach what we hope is the right result. Not always, but hopefully most of the time.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Kinda cool.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't even know what else to say about that. That's pretty great. What got you down the path of becoming a lawyer,
That's
going
what I was
towards
thinking. Yeah.
law? Yeah, in the first place, what was that piece of you that wanted that?
Well, I always enjoyed debate. And when I got to high school, I joined the debating society immediately.
Oh, cool.
And I also started writing for the paper.
Okay.
And everybody said, well, you like to write and you like to speak, you should be a lawyer. Well, I didn't know any lawyers. And there were none in the family. I didn't know any, although Beverly Hills is full of lawyers
Hmm.
Yeah.
and doctors. But in any case, it was a default situation. I also thought about being, going to journalism school because, again, I wrote for the school, my college paper, and I enjoyed it. So I thought about that. So I got applications to law schools and journalism schools.
Mm.
The J school applications wanted essay after essay and all sorts of analysis. Law school applications were just send me your grades, send me your law school law boards.
No.
So
Okay.
I dashed those off very quickly, and then sat down and started grinding away on the journalism school applications. Before I could get the first one into the mail, I got into a law school.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
And I figured, okay, Yeah, I'm going to be lazy. I'll go to law school. We'll worry about journalism later.
You sound like one of those elite athletes that's like, I'm good at baseball and I'm good at football.
We'll see which
You
one
know?
sticks.
Yeah. Who's going to give me
Well,
the contract? So that's
No,
adequate. Put me adequate. And so in
I,
any case, I never applied to journalism school. There are times I think I should have,
mm,
especially when I was a lawyer, because practicing law finally got boring and tedious and
mm,
stressful. Uh,
no, I can imagine the stress.
yeah.
mhm.
So, I'm very glad I got out of it when I did and became a judge. I mean, there's
Um,
stress on the bench, but it's a different kind.
Sure.
For me, it's much more tolerable and actually fun at most of the time.
That's good.
Yeah.
when did you decide, I kind of want to write a like my memoir, my book
Um,
about my experience?
well, we had a family friend who was a literary agent, and she was always telling me to write about, your father because he was an interesting guy.
Mm.
Mm,
And then write about Stan. He's an interesting guy. And I kept saying I'm too busy being a lawyer. Then I kept saying I'm too busy being a judge. Unfortunately, she then died.
mm.
No.
But I like to write, and I went to a writers' conference. And a couple of people there said, because I had to submit a couple of essays to get in,
Mm.
they said, you really should lengthen these things out. There's something more here than what you've written.
No.
And that created the idea for the book. And when COVID came along and the courts shut down, I got serious about it. Presto, every other weekend, coming of age with two different dads.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Did you come up with the title?
Um, Actually, yes. It was
Awesome.
not my first title. I had several that I went through,
Uh-huh.
I like
but
the
my
title.
publisher and I went around and around, and we finally settled on that one.
It's a good one. It makes a lot of sense. And
Yeah.
it definitely, we've passed the kid off weekend by weekend.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so she will definitely understand what you what you're
We've
saying.
tried different variations of, like, hey, you're gonna get her Monday through Thursdays, and I'll get her these days to these days, and it's like
Yeah,
no. So we ended up having to ask her,
Yeah.
hey, what would you prefer? What's gonna be easier for you
sure,
Yeah.
to manage us?
So
sure.
you kind of got your journalism in there. It's not quite journalism, but
It's that
that
writing
that
aspect.
writing itch that you probably had your whole life, you were able
Right.
to accomplish that. And is that why you're coming out on the podcast and things? Is that you have the book coming out? Is that
The book
your
is out.
The book's out.
yeah,
The
right.
book is out there. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at Barnes and Noble. You can
Yeah,
get it at any Barnes and Noble bookstore. If they don't have it, they'll order it for you. Uh,
Awesome.
yeah. I
it's
started
on
reading the first
Kindle.
few
It's
pages of it.
sorry.
Because like on your website, I could see that you can like check out the first like I think it's like 35 pages or something.
Right, typical of Amazon.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was kind of like going through that, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna get this.
Yeah, it does seem like a
No,
fascinating
it
book.
was very
And
fascinating.
your
Did you
life
get a copy? I
experiences.
hope.
Oh yeah, I'm getting one.
We will.
Get
Promise.
copies and leave
We will.
reviews on Amazon. We always like good reviews on Amazon.
Oh, for
And
sure.
by
We
the
will.
way, the author's name is my legal name, Anthony Mohr, not Tony Mohr.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you have lived a fascinating life
Thank you.
with the ups and the downs. It's really amazing what you've accomplished. And
Yeah, because I think like you said, you kind of lean towards that like good crowd growing up, and there's so many times where kids who kind of grow up maybe in that same scenario tend to just whatever f life. I'm just gonna do this or do that, and just kind of let their life go into shambles. And let that stress of maybe being in a blended family or household or a broken home or whatever you call it, and that can they let that kind of run their life, and it looked like you took it by the reins. Like, no, I'm gonna do something different with this. I'm gonna make something out of myself.
Jesse, the unsung hero of my book was my mother.
mm,
Oh,
She is in the book. I initially she really wasn't, but everybody who looked at it, I had including the editor of the publishing house, said your mother, you should dial her up more because she really did wonders for you, and she did.
mm.
yeah,
And so if and when you read the full book, you'll
yeah,
see that she was very helpful, and I'm sure she guided me the right way.
yeah. I used to. Me and my mom didn't get along the greatest a lot of times. We got along, but like, there'd be those, I'm a teenage kid being dumb. But then as I got older and, obviously had kids of my own and stuff, I started really realizing that the sacrifices she made for me and my brother and sister. And so I was just like, she kind of was that guide to steer me kind of in a different direction, I think.
Right.
Even though I might not have agreed and I'd have kind of pushed against it here and there, but
Kids.
she always kind of kept me, I think, focused on don't go this way, go this way.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was lucky to have her.
It's
Yeah.
awesome.
Lucky to have her. She
Yeah.
never knew I became a judge. She died 12 hours before the governor's office called me.
Really?
Oh man.
Yeah.
So you had no idea leading up to that point that that could happen. It
Oh, I
was.
knew. I knew because you go through a long application process
Oh, okay.
and you
Okay.
have multiple interviews, and the last interview was with the appointment secretary.
Gotcha.
So I knew I was close, but
Hmm.
you still don't know. People go all
Right.
the way up to the appointment secretary and then never get the appointment.
Hmm.
So, but
So
so I,
she was aware at that point that this was a possibility, but she never got to see it come to fruition.
correct. Yeah.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It was terrible.
Yeah.
The day became a roller coaster.
Mm.
Oh, I'm sure. So many emotions.
Yeah.
So in your life now, you said you were 66 when you got married. Is that
Correct.
right? Does your
Correct.
wife have children?
No.
No. Okay. So,
No.
well, that makes it a little easier, I'm sure.
Oh, it was a cinch. It was a cinch.
Yeah. Did you ever want kids, or was that something that you were more career focused and that wasn't a
I was
concern for
more
you?
career focused.
Mm.
I always said to girlfriends, look, I'm not eager for children. If you want them, I'll go along with it.
Mm.
But I'm not like panting to have a child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's good. I mean, you knew what you wanted, and I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. And
commendable.
that's success, right?
Oh
You
yeah.
have to know what you want and
Yeah.
go for that. So, yeah.
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 I think
I was pretty goal oriented at the time. Now, I always wonder, well, it'd be nice to have a kid. On the other hand, I have friends who have children who are wonderful and they're fabulous and they really have, added value. But I have some friends who have kids who have become nothing but a problem.
Mm.
I have one friend who has two kids. One of them has got serious mental troubles.
Mm.
The other, they're estranged.
mm,
Just they cannot get along. Period.
Yeah.
that's
He cut
unfortunate.
them
It's
off.
not always easy. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
No, it's not.
Whether
No,
they're yours or somebody else's, it's not always easy.
Right.
it's always something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't know if I ever knew I wanted kids up until like later on.
Mhm.
And then I was like, oh, well, I guess we're having a kid.
Oops.
So yeah, sometimes nature will decide that for you, but
Hey.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's cool.
yeah.
Well,
Well, awesome. Well, Tony, we really appreciate you coming on today. You are a fascinating person. And
Thank you.
seriously,
Yeah.
so many facets of your life could be complete different books. So keep writing and
I'll
enjoying
do my
life.
best. It's been a
Yeah.
pleasure talking with both of you guys. It's been
Yeah.
lots of fun.
It's
Oh,
been
yeah.
great talking with you too. We really
And
appreciate you coming
you
on.
guys have good chemistry. I can see why you're
Well, thank
taking
you.
off or will take off.
We shouldn't based on what everybody says,
Yeah,
but we
yeah.
do. So that's why
Yeah,
we
they
do
always-
it.
do you own a boat? Like, do you go out boating since you like Stan kind of introduced you to, on yachts and all that?
I get seasick.
Oh.
So, with Stan, I put up with it, and
Yeah.
Mhm.
we didn't do any really outside blue water sailing. We sailed like from here to Catalina and back.
Mm.
But the answer is no. I mean,
Oh.
when Stan died, we had his boat, and for about 3 or 4 years, my wife and I took it out. My siblings and I took it out, and we had some fun with it.
Yeah.
But after a while, it was like, okay, let's sell it. We've had. I have gone cruising since then,
Oh, that's
which I
neat.
never did before. But
Uh-huh.
on a huge boat with stabilizers, I'm
A
fine.
little better.
Yeah, I've been on a cruise. Yeah, it's so much nicer. Yeah.
Now, my stepbrother Skip spent 7 years sailing around the world on his own boat.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah,
Wow.
yeah. He took his wife and 2 kids, and they circumnavigated. But then
That's-
they don't get seasick.
That is wild.
I think my wife would get seasick.
Yeah.
Alicia. Yeah.
I don't
She's
think I
motion
would.
sickness, but I think she'd be good on like a cruise, like you're saying, because it's very stable. I've been on a cruise. It's not like you're not like too
Mhm.
crazy, but
Yeah.
Man.
they're just huge boats.
Well, they are. We just got back from one. We spent 3 weeks sailing down the west coast of Africa.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
That's
That's cool.
Just fascinating.
I'll bet.
That'd
Yeah.
be beautiful.
Did
It's an
you
education.
get off the boat and do the excursion
Yeah,
stuff? Did they allow that? Yeah,
we did
awesome.
that in every country. We were like, we saw Senegal, the Gambia, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Togo, Namibia,
Oh,
Sao
that's
Tome.
cool.
We were
That
all
is
over the
awesome.
place.
Wow.
I would do that.
Yeah.
1% Senegal, so I'll do it.
He's very proud of his heritage from
Well,
23andMe.
the one thing you should do if you cruise to Africa, and they didn't tell us this, and I'm sorry, I told them they should on with the future cruises. They should tell you, bring things to give away because they
Oh,
really they need things. I don't, I don't care if it's shampoo or soap or whatever, and bring some extra money because if you go and you visit the schools or an orphanage, which we did, they're really going to ask you for help because they need it desperately.
Oh,
man.
that's good to
Even if you
know.
give them $10 or $20, that goes a long way.
Sure. That's got to be a little heartbreaking to be like, oh, oops, sorry.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we went ashore, and I'm not a souvenir type of guy, so I didn't bring a lot of cash.
Right.
Yeah.
Had I known, I would have.
Right. Yeah, that's true. You would think that they might warn you at least a little bit.
Yeah, I'll just give you a heads up, like, hey,
Yeah.
if you want to help out, maybe bring the extra clothes or something you can give out to the kids or
Yeah.
money to the kids or something to
Well,
help.
certainly cash, certainly
Yeah.
cash.
Yeah.
I think kids are adorable. I mean, we were in these elementary schools, and they wanted to know as much as we could tell them about where we're from and what it's like, in Europe or in the U.S. or wherever. It
Yeah.
was
That's cool.
delightful.
That's awesome. I
Yeah.
teach. That's what I do on my day job. So, yeah, that sounds like elementary school kids.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you coming on again, and just, giving us your time. It was really, really, really nice talking to you.
Yeah.
Well, thank
Definitely
you.
gonna get
I
your book.
appreciate being here.
Yeah.
Yeah. We will buy your book and we will read it. And
Okay.
I think a lot of people should. And you should just keep writing.
Every other weekend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Every other weekend. And you said it's available on Amazon.
Barnes and
Uh,
Noble, IndieBound,
okay.
You name it.
yeah.
So just
My
everywhere.
website, anywhere.
All right. And it's under Tony Mohr.
Anthony Mohr.
Anthony Mohr is the author to look for. Anthony Mohr, every other weekend coming of age with two different dads. So
That's it.
that's awesome. Well, yeah, again, thank you for being here. This has flown by.
Yeah.
Very interesting conversation.
Cool.
Yeah.
You've led a really interesting life.
Yeah. I
Thank
have a
you.
lot more to do with my life.
All right. All right, you guys take care.
You too.
Enjoy the new year.
You
Yes,
do the
you
same.
too.
Have a very good new year.
Okay.
All right.
Bye bye now.
Take
Bye.
care.